Hi, I'm Rachel. The battery is lower on this camera than I thought it was, so maybe that'll inspire me to go quickly. uh, anyway, this is a response or discussion video about the literary fiction book tag and some other things along that vein, but I wanted to link the creator's tag down below. I've watched a couple of videos of people doing this tag and it's generated responses in me because I guess I would say I predominantly read literary fiction, although I think really I'm sort of at a tie between that and science fiction and fantasy. And then to a lesser extent, I read memoirs and maybe mainstream fiction, which I would categorize as more plot driven, although I don't know if there's really that distinction. I'll talk more about that later, but I'd say I read a little less of that, and also I'm starting to read more nonfiction, mostly of a historical, social history bent, very squarely within a Jewish context for the most part, and a small dash of poetry. But anyway, I predominantly read literary fiction. And I know one of the issues that comes up with literary fiction is an issue of either snobbery toward or against it. I think there's a lot of flack given when people only read in one genre, which in a way seems unfair. I think on BookTube, maybe to an extent, we read more widely, or a subgroup of us read more widely than one genre. I tried to put my credentials up. But out in the world, I think people tend to stick to more narrowly into what interests them, whether they read literary fiction of a certain type, genre fiction, type of genre fiction, or even nonfiction. People who only read nonfiction are only activating one part of their brain and their thinking and not another. So I think there's a lot of flack given when you only read one thing, usually being judged by someone who reads another thing. But in general, I feel like we should be more sympathetic to the fact that most people really do only have a certain subset of time to give to reading, and most people gravitate toward what they like. Literary fiction, I don't know. Is it a genre? Is it not a genre? How do you define it? I'm definitely in the camp that defines literary fiction as something that privileges characters and theme over plot and structure. But I really might only be speaking to my own taste more than how other people categorize literary fiction. For example, in a video by Britta Bowler, which I've been thinking about a lot, in her latest video where she ranks her semi-finalists that she read for the BookTube Prize, she talks about two different types of readers, which are the mirror readers and the window readers. And as soon as she talked about the mirror readers reading from an emotional response, and she mentioned Sean the Book Maniac, I'm like, okay, yeah, I see myself. And then what do you know, a little while later I post my own reaction to the BookTube Prize shortlist, and then Sean the Book Maniac and I are squeeing about how we hope A Place for Us by Fatima Farhi Mirza will win. So Britta, as a window reader, classified her interest in plot and structure as what she appreciates most in literary fiction. So I probably should broaden my scope a little bit. I also bristled a little bit in a way when she first talked about mirrors, because I don't necessarily think she means it that way, but my first reaction would be people who read mirror fiction really only want to see themselves reflected in fiction. And I don't really think that's fair. I certainly can feel drawn to characters who are very different from me. For example, the final narrator in A Place for Us, Rajiv, I would say the only thing that he and I might share in common, if he were a real person, would be that we're Americans. Otherwise, he has very different experiences than me, and I really appreciated learning about them, or maybe experiencing them would be more on par with how I read literature. What I love about fiction and literary fiction, also other fiction, but literary fiction in particular, is the ability to step into other people's minds and to experience humanity in a visceral way that you really can't anywhere else. I mean, even in nonfiction, when you learn about something, you can't quite step into people's minds the same way. But I guess I'm also struggling with what I love about literary fiction as a writer. Because even though people talk about how literary fiction isn't a genre, when you write it, you have to think about it as a genre in terms of how you might want to market yourself. And if you watch my AuthorTube videos, you might know that I am in the midst of editing, for the millionth time, a literary fiction novella. And this is an area where I feel like I was naturally drawn to write in a style that privileges characters and themes. But as I took the novella to beta readers, including those who say that they read for literary fiction, I've been inching more and more into adding in elements of plot and structure. And I've been grating against that a little bit, I guess because I feel like I have a natural inclination to write more about characters and themes, but it certainly doesn't draw on readers as easily, and maybe I'm not established enough to be able to start that way, or maybe I should just realize that plot and structure offers a little bit more. See, I still grate against it. I still think about the analogy of somebody like a couple in bed at night, and one of them turning to the other and saying, "Honey, what did you do today?" And the other one saying, "Well, I did this and that, and I don't have to say it in order. I'll just say it as it pops into my head, and I'll say something that's just something I've been thinking about, and I'll add that in, and so forth." And then the other one will interrupt and say, "I'm sorry, dear, but there's just not enough plot and structure to your life." See, that's what I like about literary fiction, the idea that it can be more true to life in that character and theme way, that not everything about life is structured. But I don't know, I'm moving slowly more into that in my own literary fiction writing because beta readers have said that they're lost otherwise. I don't know, maybe I should find a reading niche of people who really want something more in my wheelhouse. I'm not sure. But then again, I'm not even sure how much in my own wheelhouse I'm in. Another reason I wanted to make this video is to talk about one of the books I'm currently reading, which is The Remains of Love by Zaruya Shalev. This is some of my Women in Translation reading of the month for WIT month. Actually, it's probably my only WIT reading this month. And this was originally written in Hebrew. It's translated into English by Philip Simpson. This is very much a book that privileges character and theme, I would say. But more than that, it is a thick stream of consciousness book. This is a book about a matriarch who is dying and her two adult children predominantly. And we are deep inside of their heads. There are just glomps and glomps of paragraphs, and not even dialogue quotation marks, which is actually a personal pet peeve of mine. I hate when they don't put those in. But it's just paragraphs of people thinking about their lives from deep inside their own heads. And so one of my first reactions is, well, she can write like that, why can't I? But a second reaction is, it's going to take me forever to finish this book. It is exhaustive. I'm interested in what's going on, but it's exhausting the way that she tackles it. So I can see why there's not much of a market for it. So I don't know, this video also in part is an update on this book and why I was saying I hope to finish it this weekend, but actually I think it's going to be more of an ongoing project throughout the month. One thing I'm thinking about just now is I could have scripted this video, aka offered it some structure, but I didn't. I guess I decided instead to ramble, hopefully thematically, on these ideas. So I don't know if I have any answers. It's interesting to note too how the BookTube Prize has laid open how few answers there are, or how fraught these questions can be, because I'm taking part in the BookTube Prize from the sidelines, but I understand there's been a little bit of drama, or maybe that's too strong of a word, but there's been disappointments over, books that have advanced and books that haven't, and what they say about literary fiction, whose opinion of literary fiction gets advanced and whose doesn't. I know for Robert's part, Robert at Barter Hordes, who, has facilitated this prize, he's just trying to go for the biggest judging pool so that the short list and the winners are most conducive to the majority of booktubers who read literary fiction. But in terms of prize drama, I guess you have to respect now how easy it is to get embroiled in these issues of whose vision gets to be advanced and whose doesn't. I'll be interested to see how I feel next year and how people respond to me next year. I'm planning to be an official judge next year, and once my opinions of books have real weight and what advances and what doesn't, what people will think of me and what I'll think of them, because I've been watching their videos with interest, the judges' videos with interest this year, but we're not directly going against each other. I do kind of wish there was a component of the BookTube prize where either in a Google Hangout or maybe privately on Voxer, judges from each grouping get together to talk about it. Not during the judging, because I respect what Robert has to say about, stronger voices sort of taking over the pack and how he wants people to respond individually. But after the judging, maybe to get together and discuss it in that sort of forum, although I love all the videos as well. And I don't even necessarily want it to be sort of a battle of the wills about whose opinion is more correct. But it just would be fascinating to have a conversation more directly with one another about how we responded to particular books. I don't know, speaking of my love for SFF, the BookTube SFF community every year does a Google Hangout for the BookTube SFF Awards where they're able to discuss their differing opinions about the books that they're judging. So if they can do it, why can't we? There's another thing about my love of literary fiction versus science fiction and fantasy is that I feel like I actually have an entryway into the literary fiction booktube, and I'm not sure exactly if I do into the SFF community. But maybe I shouldn't go down that rabbit hole. Maybe that's a topic for another day. Maybe this is a good place to wrap up this discussion video. Here's to hoping I said something thoughtful and constructive on literary fiction thematically. And thank you all for your videos and providing this fodder for my own brain and my own advancement as a reader and as a writer. So that about covers it for me now, and on a completely different note, I have this thumbnail picture of my old cat Leia, who I used as my stand-in for discussion videos, the few that I have on this channel. And Leia died a couple of years ago, and now I have a new cat, Missy, in my life for just a little over a year. I was debating whether or not I should switch over to using Missy on this video, but I felt like maybe I should keep Leia's spirit alive. Here's another question I guess I could throw out for my fellow booktubers with companions about how do you keep the spirit of your pets, cats and dogs and other animals who have passed on? How do you keep that alive after they're gone? I find it difficult in my own life because I live alone, so I'm the sole arbiter of Leia's memory and now Missy's memory. But anyway, one way is through that thumbnail pic. Thank you very much to Jasmine's Reads for creating the literary fiction book tag, which maybe I should do officially in the future, who knows. But I wanted to get this particular video up now because I'll be back tomorrow to do my Friday reads. Huzzah! Now that I've explained away why I won't be including this one as a completed one next week or this week. So anyway, thanks so much for watching, everyone. My battery's almost out, and I'll see you next time.